Okay, we're going to practice using charcoal and Conte, and we're going to be using white and black in order to make things look 3D. So we're going to actually try two different techniques. We're going to try one where we're blending it together. I call it the smooth blending technique, where we will be able to smudge it. And then we're also going to use paper as value. We will allow some of the color of the paper to stand out as like a mid-tone, and so we'll use more white to make it lighter and more black to make it darker, and leave the paper showing to make it in between. And you can do that sort of activity on any color of paper. It doesn't have to be gray. It could be on green or blue or something else. So first, let's just talk a little bit about charcoal. In your set, I have given you a few different things to try, and so I have a charcoal stick, which is pretty common. This is really good for big areas. It's nice and soft and really easy to make it really nice and dark and to smudge it. It makes kind of a smoky texture, so that's really dark. You also have a Conte or charcoal pencil, and so this is good for small areas. It has a little bit more control. It too can be smudged. And it comes in different softnesses. So just like your drawing pencil, you can get it to come with like 2B or 4B. You can even get H's. I just find the H's are really hard to use, so I tend to stay with some of the B's. There's other kinds as well. There's Conte sticks, which are very similar to the pencil. They're just a little bit bigger, a little bit harder. We use that a lot more in our advanced classes, kind of get bigger areas than using the Conte pencils or the charcoal pencils, but just aren't as small. And then also we have vine charcoal. Vine charcoal is it's great for using to like do a preliminary drawing on like a canvas, or if you want really soft feathery textures. I like that best for like baby animals. The charcoal, like the vine charcoal, is made by burning a willow branch. That's pretty much how we get all of our charcoals, is by burning wood and then compressing it under pressure, so that sometimes they're really soft like the block, or really firm like the Conte pencil, or how we get our different grades of charcoal pencils from, soft to hard. So you have, like I said, you should have 2 of them in your set. You should also have some white. So I have given you a white piece of pastel so that you could do pretty much the same sort of thing. It can be used very similarly to the charcoal stick. And then you have a Conte pencil. Now this one says it's charcoal, but you can't make charcoal white, so it's actually compressed Conte, and you too can buy stick forms of that. You also have a blending stick in your white envelope that you can use for smudging small areas. And then I didn't include it, but you can also use a kneaded eraser or a regular eraser in your set. So feel free to grab those out from your past sets. You'll also have a sharpener that you can use for sharpening your charcoal pencils. It's really hard to use the electric ones. They tend to break a lot, so you feel free to use those little hand sharpeners. You will turn those in at the end, so don't lose them. So we typically do charcoal Conte on a surface that has a good tooth. You can see that through when you are looking at the texture of the paper, like here. I tend to use the Canson papers for this. Let's see if I can get this in focus for you guys. This is the My Tins Canson paper. I like it because it has a really nice tooth to it. It works really well. You can use other kind of illustration boards, mat boards, anything with a little bit of a tooth to kind of grab works best. You'll also often spray fix these when you're done. I tend to use workable fixative to spray fix it, to kind of settle it down onto the paper so that it smears less, but just know that this is never permanent. Another thing I like is a paper towel for like wiping and cleaning my fingers quickly, so that I'm not constantly having to wash my hands in the process. So let's go ahead and start with the smooth blending. What we're going to do is a technique that's going to be very similar to what we're going to do at the base. We'll start with the scale first, And with the scale, we're going to go from light to dark. So just like with graphite, we're going to use short, close, overlapping marks. And the more you overlap it, the more it's going to be light. And then as you do less layers, it's going to get darker and darker and darker, right? Because some of that gray paper is going to go showing through. So I want you to bring this white all the way over. You're probably going to go a little slower than I am. I'm going to go all the way over to about 3/4 of the paper, right? So we're going to stretch this white out even farther. We're going to build up that surface. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from the opposite side and go this way. I'm going to let these mix. Pastel, you start with the hardest surface first. So my pencils are harder than my sticks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to smudge it together so that I get like a nice smoky gray. Now I don't want to take this dirty finger and put it back in the white because that's going to make it darker. So I'm going to go in there, and if getting too light, then I can go over here and bring it back darker. Now I didn't go over this very well to make a really good dark black, so I can add more layers of this and kind of pull it over. But the first time you kind of blend these together, you're going to find that you're going to still see the tooth of the paper, and that's pretty good. You're just kind of putting down a base layer. Okay? Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to build it up even thicker. So as you do this, I often will grab the softer of the material. Soft pastel, soft charcoal works better on a harder surface. I'm going to do the same sort of thing. As I'm going to put it down, short, close, overlapping marks. I'm going to want to stop using it. I'm going to start in the black end, straight black, and I'm going to let it smear and smudge. I'm going to ease up on the pressure. And then what I'm going to do is try to use a cleanish finger, and I'm going to smudge the white into the gray. I can kind of go back and forth. I'm pressing very, very lightly. I don't want to press too hard or I'm going to wipe it all off, right? Maybe grab a clean finger, right? And I'm going to smear that in until I cover up the surface of the paper. So I can keep working this back and forth until I get a nice clean transition. Now the nice thing about this is I can always go back in and add more light, right? And sometimes I can just find that I can make it even look more gradual by just putting the white right on top of that, just using really short, close overlapping marks. I can kind of smudge it with the pastel to get a nice silky value. Okay, so you want to go from light to dark. Then what you're going to do is you're going to turn this circle and make it into a sphere. So you can go from your handout that you have from class from last semester, or from the last assignment I should say. And so the one that I have as a sample has the opposite light source. I was using another example. So I'll use this little one that I have here. What I'd like you to do is the same technique we did before. We'll put a base layer first, using the harder one first. I like to kind of pencil in where the highlight is going to be first. Then I like to kind of pencil in where I want to put the core of the shadow. Right? So kind of have like a idea of where I'm starting and where I'm ending. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same sort of process. So I'm going to use short, close, overlapping marks, build it up nice and light in the highlight. I'm going to shade with the contour, so I'm going to use like a curved line here. It's kind of nice. Sometimes your directional lines show up a little bit less on this paper, so if you make a mistake, you can kind of just correct it by going back over it and kind of smoothing it out. Here you can really see that tooth of the paper. It's really bumpy, kind of holds it in. You normally can't fill that tooth in until you use your pencil a little bit more vertical or press it in there with the softer charcoal. Conte. And then we'll do the opposite, where we'll use it really dark here. And leave some of the paper. Now this time you can overlap, right? So on this one you're overlapping and you're mixing to make gray. I want that to be more than just a line, to be kind of a crescent shape in a way. So I'm looking at my visual here. So then I can go ahead and smudge. So my fingers are pretty dirty, so I'm just going to wipe off some of it. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of smooth it out, smudge it a little bit here. Try not to smudge the white into the black area, because you don't want it to be light, but I can use that dirty finger there to kind of add more. I can put some white down here for that reflected light, make it look a little bit more 3D. I can layer some more of this in. Remember, this is really just using that hard one first, kind of put in that base layer, and then I'm going to get it to be a little bit more soft by going in, right, and adding the softer pastel and charcoal. I can clean this by wiping it onto another surface if I need to. Use patterns here, build up the surface, really covering up that tooth here as we go, right? If we make a mistake, we go out of the way, or out of the lines, we can always erase. That's the nice thing to know about pastel. So if you make a mistake, you can always erase it back to the paper and cover it up. It's very forgiving. Now, as you're kind of building this up, one of the things that you can do when you're using pastel is that sometimes you have a lot that you put down and it's hard to blend and make a change. And so if you ever have that happen where you're trying to make something lighter, it's just not getting lighter, you can either erase or you can spray it with some workable fixative and then go back on top of it in a few seconds and you'll be able to layer it. It kind of gives you some of the tooth of the paper back. It kind of creates a little texture, and so you're able to grip it back in and keep working. So I just kind of work here using circular motions, right, so it looks 3D. Right? You can kind of fudge it a little bit here when it was going a little crooked, right? And then any extra dust I like to blow into the trash can. It's for some easier cleanup. Okay, got rid of some of that. I can go back in and fill in the tooth of the paper, but also make any sort of corrections that I need to as I go. Right? So you can keep working on this until you can make it look really smooth and really 3D. I'm going to pause for right now and kind of clean up my mess a little bit, and then I'll show you how to do paper as value.